Or to the.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Many familiar faces. I'm very excited to be here today. My name's Andy Arias. I'm the Senior Access Coordinator for Matrix Design Group. You're going to be hearing from a lot of people today. You're going to be hearing from Paul, who's the Risk Manager Director of City of Turlock. You're going to be hearing from me. You're going to be hearing from my boss, Chris Martin. He's the director at Matrix Design Group. You're going to be hearing from Matt and Jen, who are our amazing auditors. You're going to be hearing from Alberto and Marisol, who are our on-the-ground debt collectors. So we're really excited for this whole adventure that we're going to take. It's an hour and a half of fun. And first and foremost, I want to start by saying, when we do audits and when we do accessibility for any city, but it's specifically for Turlock, we really like to get to know the community. So if you have not signed in, please sign in and let us know how we can get in touch with you. Because this work does not happen without you. So this work is about doing an ADA audit and an ADA transition plan, but it's more about engaging the community and knowing what you need to make Turlock truly accessible and inclusive. So I like to say that we're going beyond access towards inclusion. I think that's really important to think about when we're looking at this work, because we're going to go over the compliance of the ADA, but also looking at what's beyond it, right? How can you really be an inclusive community and work together to achieve that goal? So that we're going to go over a lot of things today, and there is going to be community engagement pieces, so don't worry, I won't be talking the whole time. Next slide.
One quick thing, Andy, if there's anybody who needs special accommodations, perhaps ALS sign language, we do have that service here available. So if you need it, please let us know. That's inclusive of the folks online as well. So raise your hand or just let us know and we can get you involved in that.
Are you able to turn on the captions?
I can certainly turn on captions.
Yeah, please turn on the captions for folks.
Captions.
My things.
Preferably English.
Yes.
Although this would be kind of fun.
My slides aren't moving though. Okay. See if I can do it this way. Oh, that's not what we want to do. We want to do this. Oh, there we go. Thank goodness. All right. And thank you for dealing with our technical difficulties. Now I'm going to hand it over to Paul for a quick second to talk. I'll be here.
Well, because you're sharing your screen, you'll have to turn the captions on. But they're on my version.
All right, good afternoon, everyone who is listening to this. My name is Paul Moore, and there's Risk Management Director. I'm also the ADA Coordinator for the City of Turlock. This project really started over a year ago. We did a request for proposal, and Matrix Design Group, who is here today and who has been heavily involved in this project, was successful submitted this successful proposal and was awarded the bid, and so they started last August of 2025, and they expect to wrap this project up in August of this year. So it's about a 1-year process to do all the assessments of the city's parks, right-of-ways, facilities, anything involving the city of Turlock. They're assessing it. We're very excited about this process. As the ADA coordinator, I communicate with state and federal agencies in terms of funding for the city of Turlock. And this project is important to support those endeavors. But as mentioned, it's also important because we want to make this, and we truly do, we want to make this city more accessible for all the residents and any visitors that come to Turlock. And so this slide kind of captures what I'm talking about. And the reason for the community engagement meeting, which is what we're having today, is to make sure that we receive feedback from the community about what is working and what is not working in terms of ADA within our city. So for those of you who see this later on, we're going to post this on our website. And it's very important for us that we get your comments, your feedback about any concerns within the community or what you think we're doing right, so we can make sure we continue that. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Andy. We'll move forward with.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate with what Paul said. This is really about you. Yes, we're doing the work, we're doing the mission of accessibility and inclusion, but without your feedback and those online that are watching, when we do those surveys and when you get those emails from the city that say get involved, that's what this is. Typical transition plans can go anywhere from 7 to 10 years. So we're really looking at the future of what you want an accessible city to look like. That could be physical, that could be programmatic, that could be in many different ways, right? Because I like to say disability hits all of us at one time or another. And I think that's really, really important. And like this is highlighted in yellow, this is your plan and you shape it, right? So we can do all the technical things, but I really want you guys to shape it to the best of your ability. All right, I'm gonna maybe this is quickly. Very well. Oh, thank God. Okay, so I'm gonna intro myself. My name is Andy Arias. I've worked in the accessibility field for over a decade. I'm from the federal government. I used to work for the U.S. Department of Labor and worked on national policy. I've worked with HUD. I've worked with Medicaid. I've worked in accessibility. And what I know from my lots of experience is that access is the first point of entry for inclusion and equity. And I think it's really important when we're doing this work for these transition plans to keep that in mind, right? If there are barriers to getting into a building or programmatic barriers, then the barriers just keep on piling on top of each other. And that's an issue. So this is the agenda that we're gonna follow. So you heard from me and Paul, and you're gonna hear from Matt and Jen, and then the data collectors, obviously, and we're gonna see a very cool mapping tool where you're gonna be able to share any kind of situation that you encounter in the community. You're gonna be able to pinpoint that for yourself. So people like Paul and other city leaders can actually address it, right? And figure out if there's a way to mitigate it, or if there needs to be funding for it, then there's ways to work through that. And then we're gonna have a little group discussion about what you see in your community. I want that to be the biggest part of this session. I want us to really talk about what are the good things, what are the maybe not so good things, and what are the things that we can do to possibly fix those things. And then next steps, and then questions. And there better be many questions, because I like questions. All right, so again, this is your opportunity to speak. And again, if you're online, please put stuff in the chat. Sarah, please put things in the chat. We have things that are able to be sent to you through video, braille, or other online forms. So if this is not accessible to you in this moment, it can be accessible to you later. and your experiences dictate our efforts. What you see here is a group of people from our community, the direct access group. And I feel like I should dive into this a little bit. So Matrix is a design firm that's amazing from the US. And direct access was acquired by Matrix Design Group, and they're from the UK. So we're the same family, but you get universal international experience coming everywhere in the US, which is kind of cool, I think. And so you hear a lot of the words on the screen, but one of the biggest words I want to point to is transition plan, right? And raise your hand if you know what a transition plan is. Everyone, that's amazing. So this could be 7 to 10 years, like I was saying, and I think again, other cities do it differently. There's committees, there's groups that can be involved in these transition plans. So if you want to be involved, Paul's here, other people in the community are here, I would say make sure that you are one of those people that want to be involved, and we have your information and we can share with you. All right, so we tailor the needs for you, right? So we're going to be doing surveys, we're going to be doing continued engagement. There's going to be comments for the plan. So even if you're not in the room today, we definitely want to hear from you once the transition plan is released for public comment. Typically, it's released for 2 weeks. If it needs to be extended, that's also a comment that you can say and put in there. You know, your word of mouth and spreading the plan is out, the plan needs to be revised. This is exactly what we want for the city of Turlock, or we want something completely different. Those are the sorts of comments we want to hear. And then opportunity for continued efforts, like I mentioned before, if there needs to be a steering committee that this plan is under for seniors, people with disabilities, and other community members, that's something that could be put in the comments. All right, so we are big. We have 10 offices and we have a national reach. We are a multiple disciplinary firm. We do public infrastructure, we do engineering, we do planning, we do surveying, we do land development. We do a cool thing called program management and GIS, which you will hear about later. And the most important thing probably is we do ADA self-evaluation and transition planning. And the self-evaluation is really interesting because I typically was much more involved in the ADA transition plan piece of it. And now I'm more engaged in the ADA self-evaluation plan as well, which is where we measure the city, right? We say, this is good, this is not so good, this is okay. And it's a system of red, green, yellow sort of system that we show the city, and that helps them move the needle forward to accessibility. So it's a really cool feature, and the self-evaluation and the transition plan are separate but connected, right? We use one to work with the other, but when you see the transition plan, you'll have access to the self-evaluation, but you won't have to read it if you're more interested in the transition plan. So, like I was saying, we're very large, and we have we've worked with federal, state, and other private clients. So we're very used to this sort of experience in every kind of environment. And here's a great picture of our team on the field. You'll see a lot of those, by the way. And I just want to talk about accessibility for a minute, because this is a big passion of mine. I think accessibility is for everyone. It improves the usability of all things through universal design principles. I'm sure everybody in the audience knows what universal design is. Someone want to take a crack and say what it is? Participation. Anyone? I feel like I'm watching Killers Day Off. How about you, Matt? What is universal design?
Always, it's how accessibility plays out in certain facilities to make it more better, or make it more great funding, how it's marketed.
That is a great answer. And I think of universal design as a barrier-free society, right? As much as possible, and I'm not just talking about physical space. I'm talking about people with canes, people with braille issues, people with hearing loss. Our other boss who's not here, but in the UK, Stephen, he is he's deaf. And he has a cochlear implant, but he is a huge advocate for having accessibility in every fashion, just like we are. We are advocates to the core when it comes to access and being able to access every aspect of life. That's super important to us because we believe that that promotes independence and dignity, and that's a really interesting thing to think about. Is without independence, does somebody have dignity? Not always, but I think that when we promote independence and dignity, we have a more equitable society. And so, and we expand this to markets like the workforce and community participation. A little bit more about myself. When I first got started in the federal government, I was one of the only individuals that had a physical disability in my office. And so they had to retrofit a lot of things for me because I was like, this isn't gonna work. If you want me to work here, because I moved all the way from Los Angeles to DC and it's very cold, we're gonna have to figure this out. So they did. They didn't like it, but they did it. And I stayed there for about 8 years. And so when we think about what accessibility looks like, we think about all those things. What's a workspace look like? What's a playground look like sometimes? What's a park look like? And those are things we're going to hear about today. And so these are really cool slides that I'm just going to pop through. And so what is being evaluated, right? Matt, if I'm tripping on your stuff, just throw the mic at me.
It's okay.
No, you can go. You can go. This is. I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Oh, sure.
Is this? I think this is you. Pretty sure.
So if you see Jen and I out in the community with our tablets, our tools, taking pictures, that's us. Please don't, hesitate to say hello and ask what you're doing and to pop up the community because our biggest feedback is from you guys about how our facilities be more accessible for everybody. And where does that really consist of? So we're really looking at our event facilities like here at the Carnegie Arts, our community parks, our fire departments, our offices and administration offices, like our recreation division, our senior centers. And of course, our mostly used public right of ways, including sidewalks, our paragraphs, push buttons, because that's where our public uses the most access down our sidewalks and pathways to our facilities and our houses and our schools and everything. And what is our approach? So we use our 1991 ADA standards for accessible design. We used our 2010 ADA standards for accessible design. And we used the Architectural Barriers Act in the 2015 ADAS. But the thing is, we go beyond just the ADA standards. Inclusion is so important in accessibility. Without we want to make sure that not only people with our visual impairments, hearing impairments, physical, developmental, disabilities, we want to make sure that we all feel welcome in all of our spaces. So we go beyond that compliance to make sure that all of our spaces are inclusive. So what does that really look like? And so we can start with the parking, but it really starts before the parking. That includes signage. Overhead signage is key to all of our facilities in our parks. So where at any of our restaurants, our stores, and wherever you go, it really starts with our overhead and also our street signage. So signage is crucial to start, if you start that whole accessibility process. We then look at our parking, what, the location of the parking, location of the curb ramps to go to our approaches, our entrances into our facilities, our reception desks, our interior routes, our restrooms, do we have accessible restrooms? But what else we really look for is to support our guests and visitors with visual impairments, providing tactile maps and 3D maps, 3D models at a museum to support those with visual impairments. Sensory rooms for those who have developmental disabilities that may need a break, like whether it may be crowd with like people noise or to reduce the overstimulation, like you would provide the sensory and calm room. Communication boards, some of those are at playgrounds, libraries, places where there's a lot of that social interaction. And our quiet spaces. Quiet spaces really help everybody. We may have a day where we may need a break, and having a space to have 5 minutes is crucial for the rest of our days. For approaches, it all starts with our pathways, it's our sidewalks. It's that direct A to B site. Our sidewalks wide? Is there a direct A to B from our parking lot to our senior center? Or we have to make sure that they are wide, smooth, and safe for everybody to access. There has to be no obstruction, no signage at the middle of the pathways. We want to make sure that there is easy access to all of our facilities. Parking lots and carpet ramps. We make sure that every facility has a accessible parking space, as well as a van accessible parking space. The location of these accessible and van accessible parking spaces are crucial. They should be right next to our curb ramps with provide easy access leading to our approach to the facility. The signage should be at 60 inches high, clearly labeled. The parking spaces inside should have clear logos. So that really determines that this is an accessible parking space for those.
I have a quick comment about that. There needs to be more van accessible spaces at Turlock maybe. So that could be something that we put into our surveys and comments.
Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome.
And then the last thing at parking lots is that transition mark. So having a lot of transitions have curb ramps and attraction leading to our pathways. We have to ensure that all of our transitions are smooth, but also have some sort of a detectable sign. And then entrances is we just talked a little about our exterior, and now leads to our interior. We have to have doors accessing facilities as easy as it is to open. That means having automatic door openers, doors that are less than 5 pounds of weight to pressure weight to open. We want to make sure that experience to enter your facility is as convenient as possible. Before entering, you want if there are steps, we gotta make sure that there are handrails. The edges of the steps have to have contrasting and traction at the edge. But also, there needs to be identified that accessible ramp that leads to the entrance. And there has to be signs indicating where that location is. So entrance is exterior, but interior leading the way to the reception.
Thanks, Matt. All right, so Matt has very nicely gotten into the building. So now we're into the facility. One thing that I think a lot of people are surprised by, we're not just assessing from the perspective of a community member, we're also looking at things through the lens of staff and employees. So can somebody feasibly go in this and work in this facility and not only be productive and be set up for success, but can they actually feel included as well? You know, having access to the first floor and a bathroom, but yet their team is on the 4th floor is the definition of exclusion. So it's not just about checking off boxes and saying, yep, they can get into the building, yep, they have an office, yep, they can access a bathroom, we're good. No, where they have to actually be able to have access to their team and be truly set up for success. So we've just entered the building, so the service counters. Again, we want it to be accessible for somebody, somebody rolling up to me and looking down at them, they can't make eye contact, they might not be able to reach things. And again, this is from both sides, because if there's a wheelchair user as a staff member, they also need to be able to access all of those things. Enough space for turning around. Ideally, it's not just about pulling in, they need to be able to make a full circle. Signage and lighting is really critical, and communication, so assistive listening devices, the hearing aids, those sorts of things, those should, if they're not permanently set up in entryways or reception areas, we should certainly have access to them upon request. Thanks, Andy. All right, so obviously restrooms are important. We all need them. Okay, so lots of the things that we're often looking for, grab bars, sinks with knee clearance. Again, the difference between accessibility and inclusion, motion sensor faucets, motion sensor, paper towel dispensers, and soap dispensers. All of these things we all benefit from. Let's see. Also with Florida, signage, I know Matt stressed the importance of signage. Signage ideally will be hung on the straight side of doors and should always have braille. And especially for those who are visually impaired, it sounds like we might just be a little rigid about where they're hung. But for somebody who's visually impaired, that's how they're taught to find signage. So if signage is going to be there for somebody who's visually impaired, they're expecting it to be on the straight side of the door.
And one thing about restrooms that drives me a little cuckoo bananas, but I'm being calm about it. Everywhere I go, it's not just Turlock, there's a mirror issue, right? So you'll go into the restroom, everything's your height, but you can't see yourself. And there's ways to mitigate that. It's just tilting the mirror ever so forward, so it's mounted in a way where everybody can see themselves. But that's everywhere across the US. But mirrors are the one thing that I'm like, if they get that right, then they're on a roll, but it's very rare.
Well, and you mentioned something about the bathrooms, Andy, even as far as the handrail and grab bars. Most people think of it that they only need to be in the truly accessible stall. Instantly, you can create more accessibility by adding them to the other stalls, adding them to the urinals. So there's lots of very creative ways to create more accessibility. Again, it might not be all quote unquote ADA compliant, but it's still creating accessibility and inclusion. Okay, thanks, Andy. All right, so we're into the building, the hallways, ramps, the doorways, all of these things. Key things, signage, space, lighting, something as simple as the floors, creating some sort of contrast there. A lot of times we put a lot of focus on aesthetics. And while I appreciate things looking really pretty, it's great. We can still be aesthetically pleasing while also still creating an accessible space. So for instance, it is not ideal to have in a bathroom tiled flooring and then the same color tile on the walls. Because especially for somebody who's visually impaired, there's no differential there, so they can't see the difference. As simple as adding just tiling around the edge instantly creates a visual difference. So for somebody who's visually impaired, instantly it creates a more accessible space for them. Okay. Let's see. Facility management is an area that I think a lot of people, I don't want to say miss the boat, kind of miss the boat, because again, we can implement all of these great creative solutions, but if nobody's managing them and ensuring that they're functioning, it's great to have an automatic door opener, but if it's not functioning, what good is it? If an elevator isn't working, Elevators, as far as it's really important, like, it's great that they're functioning, but it's also really important to have audio. To have, visual prompts. To have, the audio where it said, letting you know what floor you're on, where you're going, it's going up and down, all of these things that many of us have the privilege of taking for granted. Instantly creates accessibility.
I have a really cool story about elevators actually, because I helped Berkeley install their wheelchair accessible elevator switches, which is where you just roll up to the elevator and hit it with your wheel, and it actually opens or gets a floor for you. And so all of Berkeley's elevators in most of their facilities had the wheelchair elevator button, as well as the other button, but I always use the wheelchair elevator button when I can, because that's cool.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And while it's really cool and the message it sends, especially for those who need those buttons, is more powerful than you could ever imagine. Because often the message is quite the contrary. This one here, the staff being trained, is really, really, really important. And this is not a one-time thing. This isn't you're onboarded, you're trained once and we never revisit it. This is something that needs to be revisited frequently. I have a son who's a wheelchair user, and I could tell you countless stories on instances where we've had experiences where he should have access to something and he can't because the person driving the bus, the accessible bus, just in December, he had to climb on his hands and knees to access a public bus because the driver didn't know how to work the ramp. That shouldn't be a thing. That should not be a thing. So it is imperative that there is frequent training of staff or anyone who's going to have to access that equipment. All right, so I know Matt had mentioned something about the quiet and sensory rooms. This, I think initially when we first started talking about these spaces, it was typically intended for those who might be neurodivergent, maybe somebody who might be on the autism spectrum. Let's be real, many of us can get dysregulated. We could be overstimulated. Many of us could benefit from a space where we can go, regroup, distance ourselves, whatever the case may be. The sensory rooms typically should consist of different textures, different lighting, lots of comfortable things, softness, sound. It certainly shouldn't be chaotic in the space. The intentions of it is to create a space for anyone who needs it to just kind of go, decompress, regroup, and pull it together. And let's be real, for many of us, that might just be 2 to 3 minutes.
Or 20.
What's that? Or
20. Yeah.
All right, so restroom facilities. These are just a few quick pictures. You might notice here the top left, this is a changing station. It has braille on it. Can anyone, the top right picture, anyone have any thoughts? Why do you think we shared this picture? What do you think that this picture might be missing or could use?
Anyway, go ahead, Alberto.
The stall doors are too small.
They could be. Yes, they could be. But something else along, you're kind of touching upon it.
Matches the wall.
Great point. It does. It does. Do we know, but just by looking at this picture, what stall is what, and if there's an accessible stall there?
No signage.
Yes, as simple as a little sign, just a little sign. It can even just be a little decal. And instantly it communicates to everyone where the accessible stalls.
Now
It's time to data collect.
Now we're gonna from data collection.
Yeah.
Before you guys start, I just want to mention a few things. When you're looking at signage, and Turlock is doing a bang up job on this, you guys are saying accessible or having the symbol. There's some cities, not mentioning any names, that still use the H word when it comes to parking and signage. Now, that's not acceptable, but I haven't seen that in Turlock, and I've been driving around a lot because it's cool to be in a new place. But I have not seen the H word once in Turlock, so that's high marks for you guys for changing your signage, using the symbol or the accessible language. All right, you guys, this is your show.
And I'm Marsal, and we work as the project data collectors. And we've been supporting the city of Turlock's transition plan by collecting the accessible data around the city.
Some of the few patterns we noticed is curb ramps. Roughly over 50% of them don't have a detectable warning surface. You guys don't know what that is. It's just a yellow surface. Most of them have them either at the beginning of the slope or at the bottom of the slope. But this is an easy issue that can be fixed by just placing on adding more needed.
And the metal surfacing of those is more permanent, but it lasts longer and it's easier for people to roll on. There's the yellow one that you see in one of the photos. Wait, I took that photo out, never mind. For the curbs, they have the yellow matted one, but then they also have the metal one that's easier for wheelchairs to roll through. And it's permanent, you can't really move it from there, and it lasts longer. So if the city wanted to invest in those, that would be a great way to go. And they're more aesthetically pleasing a lot of the time.
Another trend that we've noticed is that many of the picnic tables aren't easily accessible. We reviewed about 121 picnic tables, and about 85% of them don't have pavement leading to it. For example, this photo on the bottom right, it's surrounded by grass, so it'll be hard for people, for example, who have wheelchairs or walkers or any mobility devices to even go through the grass. So just like a quick, simple concrete pavement will help the picnic tables more accessible.
And the other thing you could do is you could extend the table. So that way the lip of the table comes out further, or you can have the bench have a seat open where the bench is to cut it, so someone in a wheelchair could roll up. But when you're doing that, you gotta make sure there's leg room and I guess wheel room for the wheelchair to roll up easily and out.
On a positive note, though, while we're discussing parks, many if not all the playgrounds, whether it's the play structures of swings, have a ramp entrance, allowing easy access for any families that would like to do that.
And we also think it's really good that the city is giving us the opportunity to allow us to identify these problems so that they could address them and improve them. And also the fact that this meeting is happening, the public input is encouraged, shows that that real commitment, it shows the real commitment to improve access for all residents.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'll take the mic from you guys so we can be fully accessible. And you guys said the P word, which I don't like, but problem, when I hear problem, I automatically go into solution mode, right? If there's a problem, there has to be a solution, right? So that's what I encourage everyone to think about as you're listening to this meeting. Hopefully you're gaining information, and if you see something in the city of Turlock, say something, right? We're having this meeting because we want to hear from everybody online, from everybody in the room. We know that there are issues in the city, but they're solvable, right? And there's ways to manage. We have Paul, he's their risk manager, and the ADA guru of Turlock. That's amazing. Many cities don't have an ADA, right? Or they share one. I've seen that too. That's a very interesting journey for them. But yeah, so please say something when you see something. And we do parks. I think this is my theory. Chris can correct me if I'm wrong. We do parks because everybody goes to parks, right? They're free. They're the one place where families gather, communities gather, and it's a space where you don't have to pay. And everybody from every economic background can go there. So at least we feel that that's the one point of contact that should be the most accessible, right? If you're thinking, I don't go to beaches, why? Because Sam and I are very big enemies. Do I go to parks though? Yes, I do, because they're equitable, and that's a big important thing, and that's why I think parks matter very much in every city. And so we do things like communication boards in places, in spaces. As we know, neurodivergence and other disabilities are huge in youth and other individuals. And we want to make sure that places and spaces are as accessible as they can be. So as you can see here, we have these boards that people can point to the things that they need and show the things that they want to do or things that are useful to them, and they come in many different shapes and sizes and varieties. But as you can see, they're very colorful. The boards are easily understandable by anyone. And here's the thing, they don't have to be for people with disabilities. As you can see here, toddlers, infants, and other people can use them as a learning tool. All right, so here's more about the benches that I was talking about, or the benches and the picnic tables. So as you can see, it's very hard to see because it's shadow. There's a little more extension on these park benches and these picnic tables so that people in wheelchairs can roll up easily in them. And so this is something to consider. And then again, here's some stuff that we need to think about because these are typically what park benches look like. And again, there's grass, but then on the other side of it, there's cement so people could roll up to the bench. But would I say it's completely accessible? Probably not, because they have to roll up next to it and not be part of the seating arrangement. And now I get to go to my favorite part. We're gonna hear about GIS online mapping and our new dashboard from Chris Martin, our boss.
All right, well, thank you, Andy. This is my favorite part too. So I'm gonna nerd out here a little bit, and this is a testament to Alberto and Marsal and all the hard work they've done over the last few months when you start pulling the information together that was actually gathered. So hopefully online, I think you should all be seeing this. Let me know if you're not, but I think you're seeing it okay. And then Andy, you're gonna need to minimize this and open up your Zoom version of your window for the people in the room to be able to see it.
Okay, minimize this.
Yep. And find wherever your Zoom is
Okay,
and bring the Zoom up.
okay. Got it. Should I stop sharing?
I don't think you were sharing,
Yeah,
or
I'm sharing right now.
you can stop sharing. Let's see if that works.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see, stop sharing. There we
Hey,
go.
good, you get the back of my head. Nice. All right, let me try to reshare then. So stop, share. Technology.
Thank you for your patience with that.
Screen. There we go.
There we go. Should I
There you go.
it? Yes?
Yes, and I'll try to minimize all these other windows that are floating around here.
Cool.
But okay, cool. We're up. All right. So this is a dashboard. It's GIS for those of you familiar with that technology.
So people can read one.
I can speak louder too, but it stands for Geographic Information Science. A lot of the schools are teaching this now, but it's really about how do you gather large amounts of data in a spatial platform and make it digestible for people to see. So what this dashboard is, this one in particular, is showing all public right-of-way data that has been collected in Turlock up until this point. So we have collected 4,700 curb ramps. We have looked at 55 medium refuge areas, 633 push buttons. We will be hitting the sidewalks themselves here very shortly. We have a sidewalk profiler that looks like a little ATV. So if you see us out on the streets, that's what that is. That is got LiDAR sensors attached to it, so it's automatically getting running slope, cross slopes, vertical and horizontal discontinuities and obstructions, and pulling that information in. So that is the yet piece to come on this particular thing. But it's all interactive, and every little dot you see on here is some sort of asset within the public right of way. So if I click on one of these, and again, hats off to the collection team who literally took pictures of 4,700 curb ramps and did the 15 or so measurements that are associated with them. And you can see the picture. You can see we did an overall condition of the asset itself, the type of curb ramp it was, and then started going through the ADA requirements and basically doing our measurements and saying, does it meet it? Does it not meet it? And that's how we came up with stuff. So we've got our running slope, we've got our counter slopes, flared end section slopes, all that good stuff is all calculated in here in a database. So for every single asset, we have that, and it's very easy to track. So when we look at assets across all of Turlock for the curb ramps, the refuge islands, and the push buttons, we end up getting kind of this, what we're terming an average compliance score. So an average compliance score is if you took everything that you were to measure with a particular asset and you were to score it on a range. So maybe there's 10 things you're measuring and 9 of them are right, but one of them is not. That's a 90% average compliance score. And we took that across all these assets types to kind of see where everything fell. Specifically for this community, you're one of the highest communities we've ever seen in terms of compliance with curb ramps, push buttons, all that good stuff. The medium refuge islands, which there aren't a lot of them, there's about 55 of them. You want something to target kind of right off the bat, I would, zoom in on that one and say, okay, about half of what needs to be done on a medium refuge island. Those are the ones that are basically when you've got a long crosswalk, it's the stopping point in the middle of that crosswalk. I might start looking at that as an area for potential improvement. Now, the compliance scores hides a little bit because you can always tell different stories with data. If we were to look at, let's say, all curb ramps were maybe one thing, if the detectable warning services was out of specs, but everything else worked, this number would be much, much lower. But when you're thinking about prioritizing what you can do with limited budgets, this is a great way to think about it, is how do you address the most problematic of the most problematic as you go through the process. And we have other filters like here, so we're displaying, if we want to see all the poor assets across the city, the critical ones, all that sort of stuff. You can just slice and dice the data. We've got a little bar chart up here that is showing average condition across those assets and that sort of thing. So while this is very compliance driven for sure, while we were out there, we were looking at condition as well, because oftentimes when you're thinking of priorities and what you do next, if it's in poor condition and it's not very compliant, that's one of the first ones you go after because it's checking both boxes of basically deterioration, and then it needs to be brought up to specs. So there's an example on the public right-of-way side, and then I'll move over to the park side. So the parks are pretty much done. I think you guys may have one more to do, but pretty much have run through and grabbed all these. And when we go through the parks, we look at everything. We're looking at every single individual asset that is in there. So you can see all the different things we're looking at: benches, cooking grills, drinking fountains, informational signs, so on and so forth. And again, similarly, you can come down here, click on it, get a picture of the bench, get all the information associated with that bench seating, all the measurements. But this little piece down here is kind of the key here, this blue sky thinking. So blue sky thinking is more, where do we go beyond ADA? ADA is a great benchmark legislation. It was paramount within America's founding and foundation, written in the 1990s, revised in 2011. It is an old piece of legislation. The rest of the world is employing different things and different tactics, and we like to sort of future-proof our projects and kind of know what's coming next. So while these may not be regulatory driven, these may be what's next in the accessibility space. So we like to highlight those, and not all of these are big, expensive cost things. They're small tweaks you can do to improve the accessibility within that space. So this is available to the city and will be after project conclusion of every single asset and where it all scored and everything that's going on. And then kind of our next steps is, okay, there's a lot here, right? There's a lot that we're looking at. How do we logically group things into projects that make sense from a fiscal standpoint of what reasonable dollars are available, whether that's through city funding or potentially grants that are out there, and come up with some capital projects that could benefit in this space. So that's kind of what we'll work through with the transition plan and the team to come up with those lists of projects. But the base raw information, which frankly makes up so much of these projects, is all here and at everybody's fingertips, which is really impressive. And for our data folks, it's probably fun for you to go, hey, we actually looked at 209 benches. That's a lot of benches. You add it all up. So definitely a Herculean effort. Similarly, we started just this week looking at facilities, which are basically the buildings like this. So we did a fire station yesterday and a couple other ones, so they'll get in here as well. And they're not going to be a singular point of uh, here's a couple measurements in the building. There's going to be more recommendations. There could be 10, 20, 30 findings that we find with that building, and then we add up those recommendations and that sort of thing. And the other key with this too is there's cost tied behind all of this. So we try to cost this as realistically as possible and then come up with a plan that is going to be feasible, implementable, because you're not going to be able to address everything right away. It's just the pure economics of it will not allow it. So we try to set us up for success there. Then the last thing I want to show, since I'm a technology geek and a data geek, and that's what I do, for those who haven't been onto the Turlock site yet, so under government documents and reports and ADA accessibility, there is a nice kind of interview here with one of our team members, a little bit discussion about what ADA transition plans are, how you can get involved, that sort of thing. But I wanted to highlight this down here, this English version of mapping tools, and then we also have a Spanish version of these tools as well. But we have used this to great success across many different communities. And this is a GIS-based tool, but basically what it does is it sets you up to start dropping pin drops of areas that you may have a concern. So those concerns could be, hey, I would like to see an accessible playground at this park. Uh, this curb ramp on my house is really hard for me to get down. Is there an opportunity for us to replace it and make it more accessible? This arts building that I would love to get into, I have a challenge getting into the entryway. Those are all types of things that we can do. And the way this works is you simply come over here to this editor section, you click on the thing that matches the most of what you're looking for. So this could be there's a barrier, or it could be proposed stuff. Maybe you want to add a sidewalk, you want to add a curb ramp in a particular location. You click on that, you plop it on the map, and then you can basically add comments associated with that for that particular category. And the reason this is important is because this is going to inform the prioritization. This is going to inform that low-hanging fruit that we want to address right away because we know it is a priority of the community. So there's two ways to add your feedback. One is saying, what is our highest priority? Restrooms are our highest priority. We really want to focus on that. So that's one route to go. The other way to go is it's actually this restroom here, and this curb ramp here, and this one here. And that's a great way to do prioritization as well. So this is open to everybody in Turlock. Any visitors can get onto this site, plop a pin down, and that will really help us with prioritization and determining what the community is valuing and what you want to see done. The last piece I'll add, just because I'm on this website, and you may talk about this later, Andy, but where we are kind of in the project itself, because I've just shown you a whole bunch of data, so we've done a lot already. We are in this February time frame, basically, where we're starting to ramp down on getting all the data together. We're gonna put a summary of findings, which is kind of like what you were seeing with those dashboards is X% of curb ramps have X problem. And pull all that together, put some costs behind it, all that sort of thing. That then feeds directly in the transition plan, which is the main piece of this project. Transition plans are written to be very community facing, not to be overly technical, but really to say these are our priorities. This is what we're trying to get at in the next 5 to 10 years, depending on what our horizon is. So July of this year, we're hoping to have a draft available that will be posted up on the website. We're looking for comments, feedbacks associated with that. And then, to Jen's point earlier, a component of this is staff training as well. So we will be coming back to Turlock to train staff and talk to them about some of these things that are out there and how the city can improve and not only focus on that, but also focus on the good things that are being done and highlight those of the great programs that are happening and saying, keep it up and get that information out so people know that work is being done. I think it's back to you,
I'm
sir.
gonna share my screen again, so give me 2 seconds. Do you have a joke? No.
So GIS,
Right? Exactly.
in my field, GIS within the municipal world, they would always joke with you that it stood for get it surveyed because GIS was always thought of as like a planning tool and wouldn't have the accuracy that like a survey engineering drawing was. So there's my joke. Get it survey is what GIS stands for. It's a really bad joke. It's a dirty joke. It resonates with me.
I thought it was gonna be better as I look for my PowerPoint, but
I thought it was great.
it's fine. It's great. No, it's wonderful. I just want to touch on a couple of points that Chris mentioned. As I mentioned before, I worked for the U.S. Department of Labor, but I was able to work for and with the U.S. Access Board a lot. And that's where a lot of these regulatory and, guidelines come from. Now, what I will say is I got the joy of working on the next iteration of the ADA, which is not out yet, which is going to have a lot more things on inclusion, diversity and equity, because it's looking at a holistic approach to accessibility, not just physical barriers and not just programmatic barriers, but looking at all the aspects of what disability is. Because I like to say, because it's true, every single one of us will be disabled someday. Even our young data collectors. I'm joking. But it's true, right? All of us will be impacted by disability someday. So when we're looking at these transition plans and the access barriers or the potential improvements that we make, I'm taking all those things into account when it comes to the transition plan draft that you guys are going to be looking at. So now, it's your guys' time to really share about your city. And I know there's some people here, but Chris, if you see comments on your, in your view, that we need to share out loud, please let us know. So we want to know when it comes to creating accessible spaces in the city, what's being done well, right? What are some things that you guys can say? I can say some things and then I'm gonna pass it on to you guys. There are lots of accessible spaces in the city. I've seen many shopping centers in different places and I see a lot of accessible spaces. I think there should be more van accessible spaces, right? And the width can be a little wider. They meet compliance, but they can be a little wider. I take a lot of room when I get out of my vehicle. It's my fault. One thing they could also do is paint some side streets with accessible parking spots. And so, but make sure there's that dip in the street so someone can pull in and have an accessible parking spot on the street, as long as it's safe. And usually those are accompanied next to a bike lane. So that way people have enough room to get out safely and not meet the front area vehicle. And those are some things that I've seen. Another thing that I've seen is Matt and I went on an audit today, and there were some suggestions that we had. I'm not gonna call anybody out on video because I don't want you to come for me. But one of the things that we saw was that the access was easy fixes, right? So they had a restroom stall that was technically accessible, but they had a door already, so, and their restroom next to it, so we said that this restroom should be designated accessible. And the other restroom should take down the barrier for the stall, because it makes it easier for someone to use that stall, and there shouldn't be a stall essentially, because there's already a doorway for privacy. And so that was one simple fix. And I said, there doesn't need to be any construction or any money spent. You just take down that wall and put up a sign, and there you have accessible restrooms. So a lot of this stuff doesn't have huge dollar signs behind it. It just has innovative, intuitive thinking. Like, what would you do if you were in this situation? And there needs to be a bracelet or something that says, what would a wheelchair user do? Like they had the WWJD, but what would a wheelchair user do? I'm gonna make that. But now I wanna hear from you guys, because you live in the city, and I'm inviting Paul, and I'm inviting everyone, the data collectors, everyone to share what are some good things and what are some things that may need work. Don't be quiet, share.
Yeah, Andy,
Go ahead.
I'll start it off.
Yeah.
So I think one of the key things within the city is, and as you guys start your sidewalk assessments, we're gonna find this out, but we have a number of sidewalks throughout the city that need to be fixed, and the height differential between one panel or the next is too far off for anybody in a wheelchair or has accessibility issues to get through. So I would say that's one of the key ones that I've been involved with. I know the city is taking steps to get that corrected.
Yeah, I think building off of that, Paul, something I've noticed just driving around, and you see that in a lot of cities, is if there's an obstruction in the sidewalk, you guys basically just went around it and kept on going. So whether there was a tree or a utility pole or things like that, but the clearance on either side of that isn't sufficient for people to pass. So that is something we will identify and see if there's some remediation issues that can be done there. Because yeah, that's basically a barrier. You hit that and there's nowhere to go. So yeah, you could potentially pull out the sidewalk a little bit if you have some right of way and kind of address some of that.
One of the other things that isn't ADA accessible required, but I think it's important for the city to think about, is lighting in the streets. Many people are still legally qualified to drive, but may have some visual issues with glasses or other things. I noticed last night, the streets are very dark. Very dark. So if you have any kind of visual issue, but still are legally able to drive, that might be a barrier for your access and safety of the city. So lighting in the streets, or more lighting in the streets, or better lane viewing, because I've noticed a lot of dots. And I know the city's doing a lot of street work, so I've seen all those signs around the city, so hopefully that's coming. But the lighting has been a thing that I've noticed. It's very dark sometimes, Turlock. It's very romantic, but it's very not safe sometimes when you're trying to drive around the city.
Romantic.
Well, it could be, right?
Yeah,
So,
Valentine's Day is coming up.
right,
Sure.
exactly. We're a week away. So, but I want to hear from you guys.
So
Yeah.
I'm executive director at UCU Stanford Canada. We own the program to people with adult developmental disabilities. And while I'm not necessarily out and about all the time, but I ask my staff, I got,
Do you want the mic, please?
Oh.
That would be
I
awesome.
not loud enough. All right, my staff was just telling me I'm pretty loud. They think of a long list after talking to individuals we serve and just their observations. So a lot of you guys have already kind of addressed the sidewalks. Sidewalks was on everybody's list because as they're out and about, even so, our building is located about 1 block south of City Hall. And the sidewalks around there, you know, there's branches coming up, there's the difference and we have people in wheelchairs, we have people who use, you know, like canes, walking canes and things, and they get stuck on them, or we've had people trip and fall, which of course we would always like to avoid that. Parks being inaccessible, especially with wheelchairs. I think you guys touched on that, like not having the path to tables, or they went to Donnelly Park the other day because they wanted to go for basketball, but the wheelchairs couldn't get there because to get to the basketball area, you have to go across either a lot of dirt, grass, or mulch. There's no like path to it.
Grass is my
And grass and the mulch is the worst, or gravel.
Yeah.
Gravel is never a solution anyway. Gravel's horrible. So, those are the things that they've seen. Some of the curves or lack of curbing, in some areas. Also crosswalks in more than just the corners, because you have somebody who has mobility issues walking super long ways to cross a curve, out a crosswalk is, you know, it's just not always really, it's not inclusive in your community. It's legal, like he's, you know, like Andy has already shared, but it's not necessarily really inclusive. Public transit is actually, the transit system itself is the drivers are very accommodating. We've had much better success with that than Modesto. I won't give you Modesto problems, but the Turlock, it's been very good. Sometimes the bus stops are not super close to like major shopping. You have to go quite a distance or across major intersections or something, but they've done a good job of, you know, accommodating people and knowing how to use those wheelchair ramps, which you think would be a thing, but we've run into drivers also that don't have it.
Or
So-
they break, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. So they also mentioned bathrooms without the regular stalls without the handbars, because if you're using a walker, for example, you don't necessarily need to use the larger restroom.
Yeah.
You just need to be able to stand up and, you know, and you can't necessarily always turn a walker around in one of those.
Yeah.
Even some of the larger restrooms, so like your chair is not as wide, some of the people who use like a power chair.
Yeah.
Those are huge chairs,
Yeah.
and the ability to turn all the way around in the back. Not always a thing. So just things like that with, you know, when considering what changes to make is, you know, I mean, should you ever want someone to go out and about with you? A whole group of people would happily take you on a tour from their view. So, you know, it's just one of those things. So I think that was, you guys touched on most of the other ones that they had, so I was glad to see that you had such a lovely
They're awesome.
young people out there,
Mhm.
see what's going on in our city, so. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
fine.
You bring up a really good point, because we did go to this facility for that night. And there were 2 restrooms right next to each other, right? And so one had the stall that you can't turn around, and even my wheelchair could turn around in it, and the door was too wide. But the stall itself was usable, but if I was in the stall, I'd want to shut the door. Because there's another show, someone else gonna come in and see something they don't wanna see. So I suggested you should make the open restroom next to that bathroom just an accessible restroom. And just have that be the standard and remove any barriers that aren't bars in those areas because people transfer in different ways. There's different mechanisms that people use to get to the restroom. And, this isn't a fun point, but sometimes people with disabilities only have seconds before, there's an issue. So the less barriers they have to get to a restroom, the better. Right? So that's a thing. A good thing that I've seen in Turlock, amazing thing actually, is all your doors. Maybe not the ones we're in now, but most of the doors that I've seen are pretty light. Are pretty. I'm able to move them even from my height. I'm able to use them easily. And that's something every city should take into consideration, because a lot of times they'll have these nice, fancy, heavy doors, but nobody that's sitting down needs them. The Turlock is actually doing a really good job at most of the places that I've been to, having really light doors for the most part. I mean, go
The
ahead.
van accessible spots, I forgot.
Yes, van
I will like
accessible.
jump on
We
board.
need van accessible spots.
Yeah.
I've seen that because I mean, I have a small car, but I need lots of room to get my chair out and to get it,
And if you put a ramp down,
yeah.
my favorite is people who think that those line spots are offenses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a special hug. But, yeah, and we see that a lot. Oh, I'll just be here for a minute.
I
Oh,
share,
you're here.
I actually, funny story, we're segueing, my boss is right here, so I'll be short. I shamed someone yesterday, I didn't say anything to them, but they saw me get out of my car with my wheelchair and they were about to park. They parked in the accessible parking right next to me. And they saw my chair, they saw me struggling, and they right away moved their vehicle into a regular parking spot. And I was like, well, that could happen everywhere. That would be a better world. But I know that people use those spots because they're convenient for them to run in and out. But we don't have enough accessible parking spots. And you can't tell that I'm in a wheelchair when I'm driving. Because some people will see me drive and pull up and say, oh, that's not your spot. And then I throw a wheel at them. And then they're like, oh, sorry. I never throw those at people. I don't. But they see the wheel and then they feel very bad about it. But yes, bigger spots for vans or wider vehicles, because a lot of people don't think that people in wheelchairs drive vehicles. We do. And we need that extra space in those spots to be able to maneuver. Any other ideas or suggestions? How about Jen and Matt? You guys have been around a little bit, the city. Any thoughts about
I
what?
think transitions are the biggest thing
Okay.
from
Supermarket.
I think transitions from the road to sidewalks is a lot of them have thresholds, and even with the half an inch to 3/4 of an inch threshold is a huge difference for those in wheelchairs getting stuck, and actually a huge tripping concern for those ambulatory individuals. So I've been to a few of these sites, and that's been a common. And I think overall parking lots has been a little concern for accessible parking space signage has been some damage. The space itself, the dimensions of it does. So I think between the conditions of parking lots and transitions from the road to the town place, there's always going to be improvement for that.
Awesome. Okay. Anyone else? Jen? No? Okay. How about the dad? any great things that you're like awesome sauce or anything that you're like, I wanna say something?
Like this push buttons, a lot of them are missing audio.
Okay.
If it's a little too far from like the curb, not to make sure like we resolve, but it's extending the time.
Yes.
Button.
It takes me a long time to cross the road, so please extend the time. I cannot get through a crosswalk in 10 seconds. Unless it's downhill, then it's a good time, but if it's any even floor uphill, it's gonna take me an extra 5 seconds, then you probably think it will. So, anything else? No?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we could do as a recommendation of this, I don't know when the last time the city's traffic engineers synced up lights. But those things get out of sync relatively quick, and there are specific guidelines for how long a crossing signal should be on. So that is kind of low hanging fruit to just reprogram that so it's hitting what needs to be hit. Additional opportunity, I guess, is, I noticed driving around, we need some street overlays and some repaving on some areas. Oftentimes those projects come in conjunction with repairing the sidewalks and the curb ramps together. So other opportunities, whether that's state, federal funding to kind of get the repaving done at the same time and throw in the ramps and the sidewalks too.
So glad you brought up funding, because then you can't get mad at me. I'm kidding. So here's the thing about money, and I can say this from the federal, state, and local level. Local level government has a lot more leeway and an opportunity with funding and different things. The federal government is very restricted on what they're able to give funding for. State government a little less restrictive. But cities and municipalities have a lot of opportunity to contribute and to gather funding from community groups, from other organizations to say like, we want to make our city better. And this is how we can do it. There's blending and braiding of funding. I'm giving a talk at Loyola Marymount for the state of California, all about blending and braiding funds and how that's doable without federal interference, right? Or like barriers. And so there's an opportunity here to think about maybe the responsibility is not all on the city. Maybe other community groups can get involved, raise funds for access to really make these barriers, a thing. I know UCP has a lot of community outreach events that they do in many different areas. So there's opportunity to really work together. And that's sort of the next steps that I want to go into is like Chris said, we're gonna have a transition plan that we want. We will encourage your comments and we will encourage everybody that commented from UCP. I want to see a comment from you in the transition plan to say, yes, yes, no, yes, no, yes. Because honestly, it's gonna be as good as you guys on Zoom and you guys in the room want it to be. And as we stated, it could be from 5 to 10 years typically. They're more 7 to 10, but that 5-year benchmark is really important to think about because that's where you can make modifications. Because you could have a plan for 10 years and you could say this works, but administrations change, requirements change, there could be attitudinal barriers that you didn't consider before. So this is a way for you to think about, now it's time to change it up. Now we have more funding. Now we have less funding. Now we need to reprioritize. So it's really important to stay engaged and really give the feedback. We want to hear from you. And maybe, didn't tell this to Paul yet, so don't get upset. Maybe this is a good way to start a community group around the transition plan. So all these groups around Turlock that are invested into the ADA transition plan, maybe you start a stakeholder group or a committee group with people with disabilities, with people from UCP, with people from this, senior centers all around, Turlock and say like, we wanna work on this plan and take a little bit of pressure off the city, right? And so you continually work the plan with the city, and so you guys are continually engaged. So that's my hope for every transition plan. I throw it in there and either they're gonna be like, this is great, we wanna do it, and other places might be like, no, we don't need it. But I'm throwing it out there, it's recorded and I can say that I said it. But yeah, so that's who we are, that's what we do. We are going to be in this work for a while. So if you have questions or want to reach out to us, I encourage you guys to do that. We'll have information of how you can get in touch with the city through the website. And obviously, you can get in touch with us as well. Paul definitely has all our information. So that's a good thing, but I wanted to open it up right now. Chris, are there questions online from folks?
There are not, other than my technology challenges of, we can't see the screen. So
Oh, wait, can they not?
they can now.
Oh,
We resolved it.
oh, thank goodness.
But no, kind of my closing comment there, Andy, and what's so important about plans like this, and I always tie it back to funding because a plan's only as good as the implementation that comes out of it. And what you can actually get done is the transition plan, much like a community development plan or a general plan, that's the first step in laying out, here's our framework, here's what we desire, here are our priorities. And then that becomes your fodder to go after grants and go to Caltrans and say, hey, we want to get this done and we're looking for this grant funding and with internally within the city and say, hey, we think this is important enough that dollars should be given to it. But it becomes your advocacy tool. And that's why the dashboards I was showing earlier, even though there are a lot of data and lots of things are going on, you talk about having a plan, having an application like that and a program like that, it's a real powerful tool to get funding. And that's what I encourage people to think about as we go forward is leveraging those things for funding to actually get projects in the ground.
Yeah, I'll just push it one centimeter more and say that, you know, there's always funding somewhere, right? And so the idea is, where is that funding? And it doesn't have to be the city's funding, it could be other community groups. One thing, being a community organizer for so many years, working at the state and federal level, I know that people have the same needs, right? People with disabilities, seniors, LGBTQ communities, they all have the same needs of wanting to be visible, wanting to be heard, and wanting to feel equitable. So the power is really at the people level to say, this is what we want, and this is how we can move the needle to get more funding, right? Because really, it's a joint effort, right? The city's putting it out there, but it can't be done without people coming together and saying, this is what we want, and this is how we see our city being better to our people. Because a lot of the time, these conversations are done in silos and done in different groups, and then, but you're all saying the same thing. And then the way change happens is everybody comes to the table together and says the same thing all at once, and then somebody's like, all these different people are saying one thing. You need to do that one thing, right? And the message here is access and inclusion. It's that one thing that we need to move Turlock forward with that needle. And you guys are doing a really good job so far. So, but there's things we can do better at. So that's our shindig for this afternoon. If you have people that want to join us for our afternoon event, please tell them to get their selves here. Our event is at 5. So you have time. There's lovely parking right by us. So you can come to our event 5 p.m. and join us here for another session. That I'm going to close it up. Thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.